saw it online a couple days ago, whatever. I think it was on TikTok or YouTube or whatever. And apparently Morgan Wallen walked off of the stage. So I guess background on Saturday Night Live, when the show is over and they're just rolling the credits, the guest singer is supposed to just hang out on the stage until the credits are done rolling and kind of like dance around and hang out with all the crews and whatever. And apparently he booked it, got off the stage, walked right in front of the camera on purpose, and immediately got onto his plane. And I guess he tweeted shortly after something along the lines of "Get me back to God's country" or something like that. And there's so
just like a peace out moment there.
well, yeah, there's so much speculation. So some people are saying that the reason why he did it was because he was invited to SNL during COVID or before COVID or something like that. And for whatever reason, it got canceled, whether it was because of COVID or because of all the trouble that he had gotten into around that time. So he was mad about that, which, okay, I get it. And then there's also speculation that the reason why he was so mad at SNL and wanted to get away from there was because they had a clip with Lady Gaga, apparently on that same episode, where she is like doing demonic chants and they're trying to bring in this specific devil. And along with this, apparently the devil that they were calling for to try to bring in is a legit devil, which I don't know how anybody knows that, or a legit demon.
Devil or yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Demon, that's what I meant. Yeah, is a legit demon name or demonic name, and they're talking about drink the blood and pass it around, like doing crazy crap.
Was that like a skit they were doing?
Yeah, that was a skit they were doing on SNL, and I guess that's one of the reasons or one of the speculations of why they think Morgan Wallen was such in a big hurry to get the hell out of there.
I mean, I can't blame them. I don't know that I'd want to hang out in a place where they were summoning demons.
Absolutely not. I wouldn't either. Whether it's legit or not, I ain't testing it.
No.
Absolutely not.
I guess too. How do they know what the names of demons are?
Probably passed down from ancient history or whatever.
I keep having this random person from Alabama that calls me, wanting to know if I'm going to come over or not.
Probably a cousin.
It's like this old lady, and I keep telling her that she has the wrong number, and she just keeps calling back.
Is it your Aunt Grandma?
I don't know why my headphones are connected to my Bluetooth on my phone. I'm going to shut that off, so that way that doesn't happen.
So I've got two pairs of AirPods. One's an old generation, and the other one's a newer generation. The newer generation I use with my tablet for work, and I use for my phone. I've clicked the button forget device for my old AirPods on my phone. I don't know how many times. And for whatever reason, without fail, every time I go to come on here to record, it automatically switches them over to my iPhone, even though I've told it to forget device. Does it every time?
I don't even have that option.
It's because you don't have an iPhone.
I don't know that I have any option anywhere that says forget this device or remember this device.
While we continue to wait for Danny to jump on, I'm going to go on a tangent.
Oh, a Tyler Burns tangent.
Yeah. So
hang on, let me buckle up.
Yeah. I don't know. For the past couple weeks, it's been kind of bothering me a little bit, and it really shouldn't. I don't know. I kind of blame the weather. Everybody gets seasonal depression, that sort of thing. But for whatever reason, past couple weeks, it's been bothering me. So I've been out of fire and EMS now since 2022. That's when I finally hung it all up, said I'm done, literally ended everything. And since then, slowly but surely, the people that I used to work with for over 10 years have just slowly drifted away. Like, don't even, no call, no text, no nothing. And I think what bothers me the most about it is that we were all, in public safety, we all say we're family. We all act like we're family. We treat each other like family. We invite each other to kids' birthday parties and, cookouts, stuff like that. But then once you step away from that field, once you're completely done and you go and do something else for whatever reason, they just forget about you and they don't. And I get it. Communication's a two-way street. I could text them, I could call them,
You
and I
have
have
been excommunicated from the cult.
straight up, like excommunicated from everything. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still a couple people that I chat with quite often. Unfortunately, I'm still associated with you, and there's a few other people that I chat with all the time. But
Rude.
the ones
Rude,
the
sir.
one the ones that I thought,
Exiting
that
podcast now.
yeah, the ones that I thought that we were like inseparable, and our wives were really close and all that stuff, nothing. And I've tried, like one of them in particular, I have tried calling before and won't answer the phone, won't respond to text messages, nothing.
What do you think
Read it.
that what do you think is causing that? What do you think the reason for that is?
Yeah. Well, I have speculations that I probably shouldn't share. But I think the big thing is we no longer have anything in common, as far as I'm not employed by an EMS department or a fire department anymore. I think that's one of the big things. I think one of the other big things is that really that's I guess that's really just it. I think it really just boils down to, since I'm not a part of that group anymore, I don't know.
So were they friends or coworkers?
Well, it's a great story, or a great question, because somebody else had mentioned that to me today. And you think as you would get older that friendships would be easier, right? Like when you're a kid, think back to when you're a kid. Now, granted, I know you were homeschooled, but think back to when you're a kid and you make it seems kind of difficult to make friends. Like, yeah, you just go and say, "Can I play?" or whatever. But as you get a little bit older and get in high school, it seems like it's a little more difficult to make friends. And then you're just thinking, "Oh, when I get older, I'm going to have these friends, or these friends are going to be friends with me for life." But no, it gets more difficult the older you get to maintain friendships.
So, and I think some part of that isn't necessarily that it's any harder to make friends. It's the maintaining those relationships as an adult, because we got jobs, we got bills. Some of us, we've got kids. I don't know, but I don't know about you, but like I think my kids have something that they're doing just about every single evening this summer. So to catch me on a night in which I can legitimately say I don't have anything to do. I know most of my adult friends, for the most part, I don't even get invited to stuff anymore. Very rarely, because I've got an odd work schedule that nobody can figure out. I think it's easy. I work every third day, right? I work a day. I've got 2 days off. Easy for me to remember. But to find a gap where I'm not working and I'm also not spending time with my family doing activities with the kids, I just think it's harder to maintain the friendships rather than um, necessarily making friends.
Well,
I
and
don't
you
know.
hit the nail on the head too. Having kids, that makes friendships a little bit more difficult, especially when you're friends with people that don't have kids. So that can make things more difficult. When you move up within your department or your agency, you take on more responsibility, you're more busy, that can make things more difficult, especially if you're having to turn down a lot of invitations for parties or get-togethers or whatever. That makes things more difficult. So I agree. There's a lot of different, and I'll give you a prime example. One of my friendships years ago was kind of the same situation, and I, we had our now 6-year old, and that friendship like fizzled out entirely. Now, granted, there were a lot of freaking emotions at the time because we didn't know what we were doing as far as raising an infant. We couldn't go out near as much as we were previously. So those things play a role, and that's why I don't. It doesn't surprise me that if leaving the field would play a factor in that as well.
I mean, heck, one of my best friends, you know him too. He lives 8 houses down from me. I couldn't even tell you the last time he was over to my house. Schedules don't align. We've all got, big boy jobs and real world responsibilities, and sometimes, going out and having fun doesn't necessarily fall into that all the time.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, heck, honestly, I talk with you more because of this podcast and during the podcast than I probably do outside of it. But that's why, sometimes I would say some of my best friends are literally the people that I can probably not contact for months on end. And then my wife goes, "Hey, how's so and so?" I'm like, "I don't know. I haven't talked to him in 3 months. Probably should send him a text message." And then it just kicks off right where it left off. So this lady from Alabama is convinced that she has the right number.
Still calling you?
I'm about to block the number. No, she's not calling me because I sent her a text message that says, "I do not know you. Stop calling me." And she's convinced that she has the right number. So actually, before I forget, I'm just going to block the number right now. And just as an extra, screw you, I reported it as spam too.
Awesome. It probably won't get anywhere, but still awesome.
No, I don't know. It's about like my new neighbor that I have now. When they first moved in, they had their own little Snapchat location tab, and it was listed as a business, and it was like their last name and resort. And I got so tired of every time that I would send a Snapchat, it would ask me if I was there, since it's 2 houses over from me. So I reported it to Snapchat as them being out of business, and now they don't have their fancy little location tag anymore. I'm petty like that. Oh.
Hey, thanks for checking out the debrief. We appreciate every single one of you, especially the ones that have been following us since day one. You guys are amazing. Appreciate every single one of you. If you're checking us out on YouTube, please give us that like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever. Click that button for us. That way you stay notified every time we put out a new video. If you follow us on TikTok, even though TikTok's kind of up in the air right now, not really sure what's going on there, appreciate you on there. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm sure there'll be more social media platforms here in the near future. So you'll be able to find us on there as well. Also, we have a program. It's called Patreon. So I know historically we've been advertising it as $5 a month to join. Patreon is 100% free to join. The reason why we're doing it that way is we want people to come on there that are like-minded, public safety, police, fire, EMS, nurses, doctors, the whole 9 yards, like-minded people to come on there, form a community, and be there for one another when we're going through rough calls, when we're going through tough situations. Even if you're not in the field anymore, come join the community. Come hang out with us, talk about past experiences, help one another with whatever difficulties they're going through. As you've heard in this episode so far, and you'll hear in the episodes to come, stepping out of the field seems to be like being excommunicated. So we want to continue to be there for one another through the hard times. It's 100% free. If you enjoy the content that we're putting out and you support what it is that we're doing and you want to help support us more, you can become a paid member for $5 a month. That money goes directly to us. Eventually, we will be using that money once we kind of get things up and running and we're moving a little bit more streamlined. We'll use that money to support different departments and agencies and different nonprofits across the country with whatever the mission is, with a focus on post-traumatic stress and depression as a result of the field. So again, appreciate every single one of you. Thank you again for checking us out. Let's get back to the show. Welcome, Danny. Glad you could join us. Got the technical difficulties out of the way.
Yeah, I was sweating.
It wouldn't be a podcast with Cody and I though if we didn't run into some kind of technical issues. So don't feel bad.
Our IT specialist is on the premises right now, though.
And she's 12.
I'm the only one here at my place.
My IT specialist is my 12-year-old daughter.
I know exactly what you mean.
So, Danny, you're a critical care paramedic. You are a chief death investigator for Tennessee cold case investigator. You've done some lectures, part of a peer support team member. You seem to do just about everything.
Yeah, I was a former chief death investigator for the state of Tennessee. I work with them still hand in hand, but I'm not a chief investigator anymore. Yeah, you're right. I do have a lot of hats other than this one.
How long did you do the chief death investigator position for?
I did it about a year, I guess. I guess one thing in the forensics field was it's one of my, I guess, biggest passions, but unfortunately that doesn't pay the bills as well as the EMS field does. So I had to kind of go backwards a little bit to get back in. I never really left the EMS field. I always stayed in it, but that's where I can make more money for my family. But and then there was other things too. But I actually still teach with that group with the SIDS courses here in Tennessee. I'm with Middle Tennessee State University and the Tennessee Department of Health. We go around 2 to 3 times a year and teaching classes on. It's actually a train the trainer where we teach the trainers how to take it to their place and teach their people and submit their rosters to us, and then we send out certificates. But we've taught over 30,000 since I've been in it. So we get to reach a lot of people.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. The first thing I would like to do is I'd like to kind of start off with just kind of a timeline of you. So where did you grow up? Talk about, school a little bit and how you got into your career field.
Yeah, if you got, I don't know how long you got, but I'll start. I do have an interesting background, I guess you might say, and to say I'm proud of it, I guess I am, but it wouldn't be something I would encourage young people today to do. You know what I mean? My dad was in law enforcement. He was a lieutenant in a police department over in West Tennessee. I live just below Nashville, which is called Middle Tennessee, the hill country per se. But without going deep into it, kind of a short, I actually quit school in the 10th grade. I ran away from home, got up with, I'm going to make this long story short, I promise. I got up with the Wrestling Federation and went to work with the main promoter as a laborer. We worked in fields, like he had a lot of land, and me and the wrestlers would go out and work in the fields, and at night would practice wrestling, and I followed them for a while, and that ended me up into Middle Tennessee. This farmer who owned a 800-acre farm offered me a job, room and board. Again, I was only 15, 16 years old, and in a sense, I was in a sense missing per se at that young age. They took me in as their own, and I am still today, many, many, many years later, still they're part of my family, but I've been here ever since. They went to a church. The church that they went to is where I met my wife when I was 16 years old, and we're still married today. I went back to school, and again, I had no rich family, no rich mama and daddy, uncles. I had to do all of it on my own.
Why did you, if you don't mind, why did you run away in the first place?
My dad and I got into an argument. He was, like I said, he was in the police department. He come home one evening. We got into an argument. I just walked away. We got, I just walked out and never looked back. Later on, a couple of years, 3 or 4 years later, I got back with my family, and we're still close today. My mom and dad are gone now, but my family back there are really, really close even today.
So you were gone for 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, it sure was. Whenever I joined this cold case team, I'm in the office here with the cold case team. That's one of the things I stood up. One of my really passions about doing it is because I was one of them. We're working several cases of missing persons, and in a sense, I was one of them. And that gives me the courage to want to help others because I went through that. I don't regret anything I did. I actually went back to school, got a GED, went to college. I went to University of Alabama. I attended Middle Tennessee State University. I never did graduate there, but I went to St. Louis University, Middle Tennessee State University, University of Alabama, Columbia State. I've been to a lot of colleges, but from where I started, when I took my GED test at 18 years old, I never studied it. And I passed it the first time, and that was pretty encouraging to me. Again, I wouldn't encourage any young person to go through that what I went through to get to where I am today, but I think it made me the man that I am today. Entitled to anything I have. If I get it, I'm going to work for it. Again, the EMS field, I guess it wasn't long after that. I went to work in construction, and I worked for one of the big GM plants here. It used to be Saturn, it's GM now. I got in with safety and environmental. And my main safety officer asked me to go to this first aid class and said, okay, whatever you need to do. And I went, I signed up at a local college, went to it, and next thing I knew, I was going to be riding on an ambulance. I always said that's one job that I would never do. You would never see me in the back of an ambulance, but I found myself in the middle of it. And I didn't know that's what it was. When I went to school to be an EMT, I did not know that's what it was. It's crazy. I don't know anybody that's ever done that, but my first week into the class, I fell in love with it, and I never quit that construction job, making 3 times more than what I was making as a basic EMT. And my career started about 1989, and I hadn't still doing it and still love it today. And there's a whole lot in between there. But that's kind of how my upbringing came to get me here.
When you left, you said you were with the World Wrestling Federation?
Yeah, it is. It was actually, it's what it was back then. It was in Memphis. And there's a backstory in there that I never even knew while I was doing it. They hooked me up with this wrestler. And you write this name down because I want you to Google his name. And I didn't know who he was then. Sputnik Monroe. And I never realized until later in life who this man was. He was very instrumental in getting me where I needed to be. And what he did in his life is just mind-boggling that I learned later on in life. Just look him up, Google him, and you'll see what all he did. Again, I didn't know that. I didn't know this guy back then, but in the day that he dropped me off at that farmer's house and just south of here, I never saw him again. I heard him. I was at the EMS one day, and they had Saturday morning wrestling on, and I heard his voice. And I walked in there, and they had him on air. They was talking to him on the phone, and I heard him. That's the last time I heard him. He died in a nursing home in Florida, I guess probably 20 years ago. He's been gone a long time. But I wasn't really a wrestler, but I did learn, don't say it was fake. I learned that the hard way. They showed me that there's more to it. So they threw me around that ring like a rag doll. And so I never said that again as far as being fake. But I never really got into wrestling, but I got to meet a lot of good people that's involved in it.
That's awesome. I'll keep that in mind if I ever meet a professional wrestler. I won't tell them it's fake. I don't feel like getting
don't
tossed
tell them
around.
It's fake. They don't take that too lightly.
So you started taking an EMT class, and where'd you go from there once you completed that course?
I literally waited as soon as I got done. Remember back then, my first job as an EMT, I made $3.35 an hour. I had a wife and 2 and a daughter and a son on the way. As soon as I got done with my EMT, I enrolled in the University of Alabama for my paramedic, and which was about an hour and a half drive from here. And that was the closest one in this area at the time that offered a paramedic course. I did that, got my paramedic. I was a paramedic about a year. Then I joined the Columbia SWAT as a tactical medic. I went in there on to see my arm. I got my tattoo from as a SWAT medic. One of our SWAT members created that emblem. I stayed with them for about 10 years. And during that time, I become a shift supervisor at a young age of 28, I believe I was. And I was a shift supervisor for 20 years. We have in our county here, we have 2 counties we operate. So I was supervisor for 2 counties. During that time, our hospital or our county medical examiner approached our hospital. I work under a hospital like I do now, but I work in another county, about helping the medical examiner's office with death investigations. They wanted our paramedic supervisors to become death investigators to help the county medical examiner. And that happens a lot all over the U.S. There's a lot of EMS services that do that. So I did it. And again, I got sent to St. Louis University to train on being a death investigator. And just like the EMT thing, I fell in love with it. I got so hungry for what that was about death investigations and what the role as a county medical examiner does. I went to the St. Louis class. I came back. I wanted more. I went back for a master's course, and I did it. And I went for a second master's course. I applied, and Jason White and I, that's how we met. There's a class in New York that offered a course that was funded by grants from 9/11. They sent out applications, and you had to fill out the application, and the medical examiner's office would pick their students. So it's not like you can pay money, okay, I got in this class. You had to be chosen. Jason and I are one of the only two, I'm going to say world because it's a worldwide course that made it to all three of their courses. That's every time I go to one, I look up and there's Jason's bald head over there in the corner. I hope he ain't listening. But and we become friends, and I went to the basic, the advanced, and the bloodstain pattern analysis course in New York, and came back and then I started teaching with the state, and then next thing I know, I got hired by the state to be the chief. And I continue even to this day as being involved in the forensic part, either as a consultant through like this cold case team or teaching with the university for infant death investigation.
What was it that was so appealing to you when you were going through these courses?
Here, and believe me, I've thought about that a lot. And it's not about seeing a dead person. Us at the EMS, we see enough dead people as it is. But that was a different side of it. It's almost like I had become the last voice. We're first responders, right? A death investigator is a last responder. And you could be that last person to make their life worthwhile, or even for their families to come up with an answer as to why they died. That really touched me. It's not necessarily the body, but dealing with families, helping families with that. I think that's what it was. I really do. And seeing the respect from our aspect as a death investigator versus working with law enforcement, how that mutual respect went from hand in hand, that meant a lot to me as well. But I think a lot of it was mainly being the last voice for that body. I believe that's what it was. Now, I made some notes, kind of segue me into this. In EMS, I know y'all been in it quite a while, but I often wonder why myself. I ask myself that question. I should have PTSD worse than anybody out there right now. And sometimes I wonder, is it okay to be okay? You know what I mean? I see all my friends. I've got 5 friends who committed suicide.
Wow.
Personal close friends in this field. And I sit down and I wonder why. I know I'm kind of going all over the place, and I apologize. You get me back,
No, you're fine.
back, Tyler, anytime you want. I look back on my life, before I left home, some things that I witnessed, like a 5-year-old cousin being shot in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun. I saw that my mother and dad going through a divorce. I was actually at a workplace shooting where there's 3 of us, and the other 2 got into it and shot the other one in the head. Went through that, and then got into EMS, and one of the first things I had was an infant that was killed, thrown in a river. Pulled her out. 2 weeks later, I worked a homicide of a 5-year-old who was protecting her mother, who was being brutally murdered by a gang member whose throat was cut from ear to ear. She was stabbed 102 times. She was eviscerated. Then he went after that 5-year-old. He cut her throat from ear to ear, stabbed her multiple times, eviscerated her, and hung her on a chain link fence for us to find. Seeing stuff like that, we can tell our war stories over and over again, and it's not meaning to be a war story. But the things that I've seen prior to getting into EMS and during EMS and even in death investigations, I should be on that front row as somebody with PTSD. I promise you, I've sat back and I've wondered what I do different. What do I do different than anyone else? And I think you and I talked on some exercises and things that I do it's finding passion in what I do. I think really helps me. I know I got off track, Tyler, so you got to pull me back in.
Oh, you're fine. So I think it's awesome that you brought that up because Cody and I have had this discussion before, and I've mentioned it with several other people that I've interviewed. And one of the things that we try to send home to everybody is one, it's okay to not be okay, but it's also okay to be okay. You know, I did fire and EMS for about 10 years, plus worked as a correctional officer and worked as a 911 dispatcher. And there are some calls that bothered me, but the vast majority of them did. And I don't know why that's the case. And I try to tell other people that too. Like there are times where a lot of the calls you're going to be on, they don't bother you. And then maybe one specific call that you go on for whatever reason, it just unravels everything. But then there are times, like you mentioned, where, we could be partners on an ambulance and maybe a call bothers me, but it doesn't bother you or vice versa. And that's okay too, because everybody's different. Everybody goes through things differently.
Yeah, and you almost get to the point to a certain extent where you almost start to think, well, this isn't bothering me, it's bothering everybody else. Maybe there's actually something wrong with me, and I've been at that place in my career before as well, where I've seen stuff that everybody else on that scene, they're very much affected by that, and almost to the point where I don't know if they're going to be able to go back to work for the rest of the shift, and I'm just over here like, when are we going to get food? And you start to think after a bit that there's actually something wrong with you, that you don't feel it, but that's okay. Stuff.
That reminds me, I didn't mean to cut you off, Cody.
No, you're fine.
That reminds me of exactly of one of the calls in the forensic part that I look back on. Jason and I had finished up in our New York as bloodstain pattern analysis. I got back to work as a death investigator at the EMS, and man, I hope we get a body to come in. It's kind of weird. I know it's a weird way to think, but that's the way we think. We got weird minds to be in our fields. I got what I wanted.
It's no different than us saying, man, I hope we get a structure fire or something. Like,
yeah.
We all say it.
Yeah. So I got what I wanted. The phone rang, and I get a call at an aluminum plant. This one of the workers was pushing aluminum shavings into a hopper shredder, and he fell in. He went in head first, and his body went over 140 feet of conveyor. So it took me 9 hours. It took us 9 hours to work that scene and gather everything forensically, get them back in the order as to where the forensic pathologist could look at everything. So we worked that. So after that, I'm like, Cody was saying, where we going to eat? I was waiting on food. They brought McDonald's, and I was eating over there by the skid loader, and the couple of days later, someone come to me and they said, hey, we're doing a debrief on that call. I want to know if you feel like I'm going to tell you how the question was exactly, because it was like, do you want to be a part, or are you okay? Maybe that's what it was. It was like, are you okay? Do you need to go to a debriefing? I'll say it like that because I think that's how it was. And because of the way the question was asked me, are you okay? And I was okay. I mean, it didn't bother me. I thought it was pretty cool working that, getting all those body parts together and separate, doing whatever. I thought, I just got through with training. I had to, use what I taught, and then I thought about it for a second. I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway, just because of all the others, to be there for them, to show them that it's just not them that is bothering. I'm going to be there too, because a lot of them looked up to me for what I did and the position I held. So I'm going to be there too. And I went, and from that point on, after that debriefing, seeing how it affected others and it didn't affect me, showed me being a part of them meant the world to them. And it helped them get over, or not, maybe you don't get over anything. It helped them manage it, manage the things, because some of those guys knew this guy that went into the hopper. But going, I was okay. I really was. It really didn't bother me seeing the gore, because I was busy going through what I was trained to do and this and that. And a lot of those other guys are standing on the sidelines, looking and watching. That's when you have time to just dwell and think the reality, the humanity of what's really out there. And that's I guess that's my answer as to why. But it helped them from me being there. So I always tell when we have debriefings that's coming up, even though you shouldn't be asked if you want to join. If you're a part of that, it should be mandatory that you be a part of that debriefing.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of awesome points that you brought up. So the first was, yes, I agree. If you shouldn't be asked, you should be like, hey, we're having this debriefing. It's at this time, be there essentially in a more professional way, of course, than what I just said. But between that, but I also think, at least looking at my experience, I think that the reason why a lot of people struggle with certain calls over others is because they add the personal element to that call. Whether, like for kids, for example, for me, I've got a 6-year-old. If I were to go on a call involving a 6-year-old right now, it would be a struggle because inadvertently my brain would throw in that personal element of, well, that's my kid laying right there. I think other things that play a role is when you maybe have idle hands. Maybe there's not anything to do at that moment. So you just sit there and you're stuck in your brain and you're thinking the what ifs. I had a call several years ago. It was a motorcycle wreck where a individual was intoxicated, was going down the road on their motorcycle, and realized that the last second they needed to make a left-hand turn. Ended up losing control of the bike, went headfirst into a curb without they weren't wearing a helmet. And a buddy of mine who was a local police officer was on the scene. I was there as EMS, and I walked up to him and I was like, "You ever wonder?" And him and I both ride. I'm like, you ever wonder, like, is it really worth riding a motorcycle when we keep going on all these crashes? And he had brought up a good point too. He said, look at the difference between us riding and look at the difference of the people that we're running on. In his defense, probably 90% of the motorcycle crashes that we had been on involved alcohol or drugs in some form. So I think adding that personal element and idle hands are some of the biggest reasons of why we struggle with this. Because like you said at the very beginning, when you're brand new, you're gung ho, your adrenaline's running, you want to get your feet wet and start getting into the meat and potatoes essentially. The last thing you're thinking about is, man, this really sucks. This is going to affect me down the road, because you just want to get in there and start doing stuff. You're excited about it. Over time, as you start getting more experience, I think it gets a little more difficult.
I agree. I try. For me, I don't know how it works in my brain, but I dwell on all my good calls. Absolutely. We think about, and when you got that group of the fire, EMS, police together, you never know who's outside that watching, but I always like to kind of laugh. I know it sounds sick, but laugh. I remember once a fireman was having some trouble. This guy cut his fingers off with a saw or something, and there was like fingers everywhere. I always carried a fake finger in my pocket. Don't ask me why. But and he was sweating it, dude. He found this finger, and he was like, I found this here. What do I need? I said, I'll take care of it here. And so I walked back up, and then I thought about I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. I went back over to him, and I said, here, I found another one, man, and it was that fake finger I had. I kind of threw it at him. And he about died. And we laughed about that. Was 10 years ago or 15, and we still laugh about that today. Laughter breaks the ice, literally breaks the ice. And I use that, but you got to be careful because you don't want to do it in front of the family. I did get in trouble. I worked with a forensic anthropologist, Hugh Berryman's world-renowned forensic anthropologist, and he asked me if I would join him and his team to go down, and they had a cadaver dog hit on an area, and he was going to go down and excavate the area with his college students. And I was just down as be there with them. So we're doing this all day long, and it's getting late, and now I'm over. I see a rock, and I kicked it, and I said, "Oh, I found a finger." That a finger comes up again. It wasn't that one, but anyway, we laughed about it, and I got a call. He called me the next day. He said, "Danny, I got a complaint from a family member that said that you were laughing about it." He said, "Listen, I'm glad you did it before me because I was about ready to do something." And so I did get caught that day because you never know when somebody's watching. But using laughter in it's what I think helped me really.
Well, that's one of the things that the general public doesn't understand, and it's nothing against them. It's, how can you understand unless you're in the field? But you're right. Laughter is the healer of everything. Like Cody said, we may be on a horrific car crash or something that's a fatality, and we're sitting there thinking about what we're going to have for dinner. Like, you kind of have to joke about this stuff, otherwise it just eats at you.
That exercise, I told you that the kind of walking into the fire guys that one day, and the cloud was just like thick because they were talking about, we in Brentwood, we share their quarters as an ambulance for 12 hours. So we were over there, and the Brentwood fire was talking about, you know how it is when you tell one bad call, somebody's going to tell another, it's just the way it goes. It's just, we feed off of that. And I walked into this thick cloud of bad calls, and everybody's one tell one, and the next one would tell another. And it was like walking into a thick fog, and I had an idea. So I said, hey, I'm going to tell you this call I went on. I said, it was back years ago. I went in, met a partner and I did. It was when you pull up to a house and everybody's outside, it's probably not going to be good on the inside. So my partner and I went in. This is a true story too, by the way. But my partner and I went in, and we found this man in a back bedroom. He'd been dead probably 3 or 4 days, and you can imagine what the decay looked like and smelled like. We saw really quickly there's nothing we can do as EMS, so I asked my partner if he would go out and get a body bag and from the ambulance, and he did. He walked out, and when he went outside, I hid in a closet. It had one of those curtain closet doors, and you could hear him come back in. The floor was squeaking, and he was just like walking slow, and everything was quiet. He come by me, and I jumped out on him, dude, and I can still hear his scream today. The body bag went up there, and he ran outside, and I swear the law enforcement drawed down on him because they didn't know what was going on. Scared the bejeebers out of him. And I told that story, and everybody in that fire hall laughed and laughed, and that cloud just went away. So I used that exercise in a class that I did. I said, okay, what I want everybody to do is tell me a bad call. Not everybody, but I just from, and they would, again, they'd talk about the sad, bad calls that would go on. And then I said, now somebody tell me a funny one or a good ending call. And this dude told this story, dude, that I can't get it out of my head. He told me that he went on a call where they did canoeing, and this girl twisted her ankle. She needed to go to the hospital, she said. And so she got up in the ambulance, and her friend jumped up in there with her and said, hey, can I ride with her? It's quite a ways to the hospital. And he said, yeah. She said, yeah, come on, get in. There wasn't a whole lot to do. It was just twisted ankle, And so he said that just got started good. And the other girl, the passenger said, hey, do you have a bedpan? And he said, hang on. I don't know if you guys check your trucks off or not, but that's one thing I always forget to check anyways for bedpan and urinal. But anyway, he did not have one. He had a urinal. He handed it to her and said, can you hit this? And she said, yeah, I can hit that just fine. So he said, I'll give you some privacy. I'll turn around and look up front. And a couple minutes later, she said, hey, I'm done. He turns around. And when he turned around, she handed him that urinal, and it had a turd sticking out the end of it that far. He said, I froze. He said, I didn't know what to do. How did she hit that hole? And and then the whole class just went berserk, here. And I still tell that story because it just it kills me. And then the other day, this has just happened. My good friend, I've been a paramedic a long time. He told me a call. He said, I went on this call, this old woman. She had fell and got her in the ambulance, and I was palpating her stomach, and I found this herniated area on the lower part of her stomach, and I was palpating it. And he said, "This is really worrying me. It's a really hard area on the end." He said, "I'm just going to look." When he pulled it up, her boob was sitting there. He was palpating that woman's boob. He said she liked it, but he thought it was a hernia on her stomach. But anyway, so telling those stories like that, dude, it does.
They're the best kind of stories to tell, really.
100%.
It is. So that's one of my things that I do to help with somebody that's having some problems. We laugh, we find good calls, we dwell on them.
I got one of those, but I'm not going to repeat it on this podcast.
Yeah, you better call me later.
I think I know which one it is.
Huh? Yep.
Yeah,
Cody's well known in our area.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me off air about that one then. I like to hear it.
Yeah, I will. It
Hundred
involves me
percent.
losing a finger of a glove.
I know. I can imagine. Probably been on that one.
Danny, how did you get into doing cold cases?
About a year and a half ago, I worked with law enforcement for a long time, with law enforcement, and even with SWAT. So I've kind of been around a while and got a pretty good reputation in the forensic world. Do you remember the cold case in California, the Golden State Killer? It wasn't that long ago. It was a police officer. It was a serial killer, but they found out once they caught him, it was a former police officer. The team that solved that case was a cold case team that was developed with different mindsets, with different diversities, like college students and someone else outside of law enforcement or whatever. They just got a group together. The FBI was involved in it. And so this team solved that. So these teams started popping up all over the U.S. Our county here started that team a year and a half ago, and I was asked to be a part of it. We have 2 college students. We have a detective that I worked with years ago and helped him on a cold case, and I'm going to tell you about that one. So him, and then the current sheriff that works in this county, and then the homicide detective. That's our team. So we pull up old cases. One of the retired detectives that came in with me, he and I worked a case of a girl's body or remains was found in 1972, February the 14th. Nobody ever reported her missing, and all they had was her actually bones because she had already skeletonized. The University of Tennessee at Knoxville, you ever heard of the body farm? That's where her remains had got sent. So we went up to the body farm and got her skull because we were going to take her skull and get a CT scan done and see if we can get a facial reconstruction from her skull. Try to make this long story short again. Anyway, this was like in 2012. We got close and close. The forensic pathologist or forensic anthropologist I told you about earlier that kind of got on to me for kicking a rock, saying it was a finger. He was working on a case of getting our soldiers back from Monterrey, Mexico. That's the first time our country sent over soldiers to another country. Well, they just left them when they died. So we've got a lot of soldiers over there. So he was very instrumental on getting those soldiers back and identifying who they are. Um, I've got a magazine I'll send you that's got his, and I've got an article in there too that they published on some things that I do. But what they were doing to identify those soldiers made me think that he can help me identify this girl. So I met with him, me and the detective did, and they were doing a test on bones that they can tell what water they drank from when they were young. So they would take that finding and go to a region that would narrow their region of search down really, really small to help identify who these soldiers were. And I thought, well, if I can do that with my girl, our girl, then that would help identify. So we went up and met with them, and they did offer that. And also they talked about genetic genealogy as far as helping identify her. As time went on, that detective I was working with retired. And while we gave them the information that we learned, they did take that information as while he was retired and I was doing my thing. Just before our cold case started, they solved that case. They took her genetic genealogy, ran it through the system, and got a DNA match to a sister in Chicago. So they contacted her in Chicago, got all the information, and everything matched from what we learned during our investigation. So that was actually our first cold case solved, but it was just before we actually got going good here. So we take cold cases here that's in the log, and we just attack them at one at a time. We meet once a week. We take the information, we all with our different mindsets, and we try to help solve them. So that's kind of in a long version of how I got part of this cold case team. Tyler's like, you done went off track so much.
Oh, no. This is awesome. I love every minute of it. I was trying to give Cody an opportunity to ask a question because I feel like I cut him off all the time.
No, you're fine. I'm actually sitting over here reading about the cold case in particular that he was talking about.
Yeah, she was. We from our investigation, we seen that she was between 16 and 20. She ended up being 20, 19 or 20, I believe. Actually, we could tell how she died. She was by her bones, by study of her bones. She had broken ribs that actually would break. You know how ribs are, they'll try to grow back, and then they would have that calcification, and then they would break again in the same area, meaning that she was beaten over time. And what we did find out later, that she had a pimp that would take her from Memphis, Tennessee to Knoxville, and they would go, and we're about halfway in between, and that he would prostitute this girl out, and then I guess he just beat her until she died and dumped her remains off on the side of the road. But it's amazing what you can find by the study of the bones. That's what happened to him.
That's impressive. I know. I mean, obviously, over the past 15 years or so, we've all heard stories across the news talking about cold cases being solved by being able to finally pull DNA and stuff like that. But it's really impressive no matter how many times you hear it. That's awesome.
Well, even just, getting a group of people together with different backgrounds and different viewpoints and looking at the same thing from different angles, I think is big as well.
Yeah, especially younger people. I can say that because I'm 60 years old, but this younger generation, they know how to get on that social media and just track it back, finding, how people others are surfing the web and how they're on their Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all that. That keep an eye on people. You don't think you're being watched when you're on your platform. Believe me, you're being watched because we watch them like a hawk. We had a suspect that we were looking at for one of our cases, and he was a very hot suspect that when we interviewed him, he went off. He stopped. He stopped everything he was doing. He didn't get on Facebook. He didn't get on any of the platforms anymore, which was a red flag, and we're still looking at him today. Now, the reason what got his involvement was he was our first case, or he wasn't, but the first case was a missing 20 years ago, missing young girl that her body still hasn't been found. And that detective that retired that I worked with, that's really got with him because he worked that case from the very beginning up till he retired. And now we're opening it back up. In 2021, a letter showed up at the police department and it detailed her homicide. I'm talking, dude, it was like written to where you could not make this stuff up. It detailed that she was taken, it named two people's names. She was taken, I can't say a whole lot about it, but she was taken, she was raped, she was murdered. The two people's names that were put in there who did it, where she was, an area of where she was buried, and a pile of bricks put on top of it. So what we did was, the reason I'm pausing, I got to be careful not to say anything that will come back because this is active right now. But we got the DNA off that letter, off of where you lick it and close it. We actually we found DNA off of it, so we're tracking it back to the one that wrote the letter. That's actually what we're doing now. So I guess I better get off that subject before I say too much.
It's impressive though, like to be able to, you would think from, residue and glue and stuff like that. That's impressive that you can still pull
It
that.
is. I mean, 20 years ago, it took the size of a quarter to get a DNA run on it. Now it takes moving your fingers back and forth, and where you were holding up your hand to put your fingers back and forth like this is where we can actually get DNA from that. That's how much
That's amazing.
evolved in 20 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's
Just
awesome.
the science and the technology that has created the ability to do that's just amazing.
It is.
And honestly, my wife probably knows more about it than I do because she watches all those shows.
Oh, hey, I do too.
Your wife,
except for
your wife already has
first
it
48.
planned.
I don't watch it.
What'd you
Right.
say, Tyler?
Especially that Jason White guy. Man.
Yeah.
He's sketchy.
Yeah.
Cody, I was saying that your wife has watched probably enough of those crime documentary shows that she's already got you planned out. So just watch
she
out
probably
for that.
does.
Hey, let me tell you one more thing about that, and it kind of goes along what we're doing. You remember I told you where I was from is West Tennessee. My family is my mother's maiden name is Hathcock. Do you remember? Y'all might be too young. I don't know. You may not be. The movie Walking Tall with Buford Pusser. Okay. That's so my family was involved in that. I remember teaching the McNairy County Sheriff's Department death investigator stuff. And I said, listen, my family may have been on the wrong side of the law back in the day. I don't know, but don't hold that against me. So that is now an open cold case because there's a guy, a former police officer out of Arkansas, that dove into this many years ago, showing that what happened to this sheriff's wife in an ambush could not have happened the way it was told. And so he got deep into it enough to where the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations opened it up as a cold case. And they have come up, I mean, and that's how Jason and I become friends, because we were talking about Walking Tall and Buford Puzzler, and we just went on and on. So he's coming down. We're doing we're going through the ambush site next month. Jason is coming here, and we're going to travel over there and go through that ambush site. I was sent the actual photographs of the car where his wife was murdered, and he was shot as well. But nothing adds up. From what I saw, I was on a podcast just about that, and we showed the crime scene photos, the bloodstain patterns. Nothing added up to what he said it had. The sheriff said it that did, and what we're thinking that he actually killed her and staged it. That's what our assumption is from the evidence that we saw. So it was enough for the TBI to open it up, investigate it, and now it's in the district attorney's hands to say what happens next. So inadvertently, I got into that cold case. I've become friends with the author of the book, and we're good friends, close friends now. We've met down there, and he's been on one of Jason's podcasts.
Nice. Kind of going back to just, I say regular death investigation, like there's anything regular about it, but going back to doing death investigations. So in the event of, say, a homicide, and I meant to ask Jason this, and I completely spaced on it, but do you think with the way technology is now, do you think that with all the information that comes out, it hinders the cases at all? Like with the information of evidence and, even though obviously not everything is being released, do you think any of that potentially hinders, at least from a court case perspective?
As far as what you see on TV and what the media puts out about it,
Yes.
releasing too much information, yes and no. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it makes it worse. I think if I'm thinking the way you're asking the question, give me an example.
So I guess for an example, well, I'll give you an example of a case that pretty much no information was released. So there was a double homicide of two young girls in a town just outside of Lafayette, Indiana. It made national news. These girls had gone missing. They found their bodies in this park, I believe. Long story short, the guy that they found that they believe did it, and I think he's been convicted and sentenced now, but they released no information about it. Like very, very little. The only things they were saying was, here's the picture of the girls, here's where they were found. In a lot of cases for homicides, there's so much information that goes out. Like the media will tell you this person was stabbed 15 times, or this person, there's just a lot of information that's given out by the media, pictures, scene, like the scene, things like that. I guess, does that make sense of what I'm trying to get at?
It does. It does. Like I said, sometimes it helps. Sometimes it. What's that case in Wyoming of that girl? It was on a documentary. Her and her husband, young husband, went out to Colorado. He killed her, came back and said she ran away. I can't think of that. There was a lot of video footage that could have been released on that one that wasn't. That probably would have helped that case. So sometimes not putting enough information out hurts, as well as getting the information out there. I taught a class for our public defenders in Tennessee. You can cut this part if you want to edit or what, but I'll tell you what I told them as far as if you want to kill somebody. And this is the reason I'm telling the public defenders this is to where they can look deeper into a case, especially one that could be staged. And that's what I really look for whenever I'm investigating a suicide or homicide or anything. Is I said, okay, I'm going to tell you how to get away with two crimes: arson and murder. Murder, you take most, and this is for everywhere in the U.S. When the law enforcement's end of year budget, it's like I'm saying, it starts in July, the new budget. So you do it around June. You go, let's say, I'm going to make it short. You shoot somebody in the head, you put the gun by their hand, and you walk out. Law enforcement, this is budget year, in the budget year. I'm talking some of these lower counties that really doesn't have a lot of money. So they're going to go in, they're going to see a guy with a shot in the head, and they're going to see a gun by his hand, and they're going to rule it out. They're not going to they don't have the money for hours of investigation to dig into it. And in most cases, they will not work it. They can't afford the autopsy that's already, because the county pays for the autopsy. Now, fire, I learned this at a fire academy where I was teaching about fire deaths. Actually, the fire inspector told me this one, but he said, if you want to burn your house down, do not go get gasoline and pour it on anything. Go in the kitchen, get you a pan, skillet, and cook you up some eggs, pour grease in there and turn it on. And then go to Walmart, get what else you need, and while you're gone, your house is gonna burn down. You get back and they ask you what happened. Say, I cooked some eggs, put grease in the skillet, and I went to Walmart and I came back, my house is burned down. And so, I mean, and it's like, okay, if that's how you want to do it. So I probably just started something now. I just created some new arsonist.
Or you can do what Cody and I actually had a structure fire many years ago together, which is ironic because his department was on the southwest side, mine was on the northwest side. So we very rarely made calls together. But we had a structure fire in a fairly ritzy neighborhood, and pretty much the whole county was out there, at least with tankers, just trying to bring water out there. This guy had taken a broom or something and was poking holes up in his ceiling because he claims that he used to be a firefighter and he knew that by poking holes in the ceiling, it would help put the fire out. You remember that, Cody?
Cody was the one that done it. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I was on the ambulance. I was on the ambulance for that one, wasn't I?
Yes.
24 in county line.
Yes.
Yeah, they also found multiple areas of fire origin.
Yes. So they ended up finding out that it was insurance fraud, and that's why the house was set by the individual. But yeah, crazy stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, because he had holes poked in the ceiling. I think he had actual holes cut into the ceiling and the upstairs floor so that way the fire would flow better.
Yeah, trying to get it to climb so the whole thing would catch on fire.
So he used to be a firefighter or a volunteer or something?
Well, he claims. I didn't remember him, and he claims he was on Cody's department at one point.
Really?
So we were never able to prove that he was ever a firefighter.
Gotcha. It's crazy.
I think he just watched too many YouTube videos.
Yeah, I think so too.
You're right.
He watched too many First 48.
Yeah, no, stay away from those. Those are just bad for you. I'm just kidding, Jason, if you're listening. If you're going to listen to me, I'm just playing. I love that show.
Horrible show. No one watches it. What are you talking about?
Right. That's why it's still airing all the time, new episodes.
Yeah.
Great show.
That's not why I have another streaming service just to watch it.
Yeah. The longest running crime show that's out there, probably.
Still a good show, though.
So I'm going to play this clip that was provided by Danny here, and then I kind of want to chat about this. So Danny, you are a co-owner of the Locator 911, and just so people understand what that
in an emergency, seconds count and minutes save lives. The Locator 911. Invented by a first responder, this everyday light bulb doubles as an emergency beacon, guiding first responders to your exact location quickly, cutting response time dramatically. The Locator 911. When an emergency occurs, protect those you love. Make sure they will be visible and found. Peace of mind starts with preparedness. Get yours now at thelocator911.com because minutes save lives. The Locator 911.
So
30 seconds. That didn't seem like 30 seconds.
It went pretty quick, but it was 30 seconds. So I know you're the co-owner, and you and I kind of talked a little bit about how this came about, but kind of tell us how this whole idea started.
Yeah, co-owner, my really, really close friend, he loves to invent stuff. He had always been that way. He invented a product called the Lollios, where you take a lollipop and it's run through it's got a O2 tube and it hooks to it, and your albuterol goes through the lollipop, and kids are able to take the medicine easier, where it's hard to put. But anyway, so he's always been in the inventor type, and we have always been really close. I was his supervisor for a long time, and a really, really close friend. and he's also a singer and songwriter. He's been on Grand Ole Opry once. But anyway, he worked a call that really stuck with him, and he had an idea. He came to my house one day, and he told me about it, and he told me about his idea. He said that he went on this call with the child in cardiac arrest. They inputted the coordinates in their GPS. They did it on their phone. They did it on their CAD. Went out several miles out in the county. They got to where the GPS said the house was, and it was an open field. So they went on down the road, and they found a row of mailboxes. Have you guys ever done that? Where it's like 7 or 8 mailboxes, and then there's a driveway that goes up, and then there's trailers or houses on each side. And he said that's what it was, and there was no numbers on those houses. There was numbers on the mailboxes, the right one, but there was nothing on the houses, so they got their jump bag, and they went door to door, and the very last one was the one. It wasn't like an infant death kind of child cardiac arrest, and I don't know all the details, but I do know they worked it, and ultimately the child died. And he said that has really haunted him, that he'd give anything to get that 5 minutes or 6 minutes delay back. Could it have made a difference? And he said, I got to thinking about something my dad told me years ago about a blinking light to help first responders. And he said, this is my idea. He said, what if we come up with a light bulb that goes on your porch that's connected, that will replace your existing light bulb that's a regular light, but if you need it for an emergency, you hit the button and the light flashes, and it helps first responders find you quicker. He said that my idea is for an app version. It's an app that goes on your phone. It's connected to Wi-Fi. You can turn your lights on and off as regular lights. Then if something happens, you can call through that app, and actually it activates the light immediately. He said, that's my idea. What do you think? I said, it's great. We sent that to Harvard and Yale to have them look at our plans, and it came back with high marks. So we went to work getting a prototype. And not only do you have to have a prototype for the product, you have to have an app that will talk to the prototype. So nowhere in the United States do they make LED light bulbs. They're all made overseas. And so we had to reach out to a company in China that would make their product. It took several years to get to where we found the right people that could make it in China, and then the right app company that could do it in the U.S. We did it. It worked. We got it good. We had 2 other partners come on board because of financial reasons. It costs a lot of money to develop a product. So we did. We finally got it going. It's been live now for about 3 years, and we are now in every state except Alaska and Hawaii. Now, we may be in Alaska. We've come up with a new version that's not app-based. It works off of a button. You just push the button. There's a white button and a red button. You push the red button to activate the emergency beacon. The white button just activates the light on and off. So that actually has done as good as the other one. But it started with because of the death of that child, and it's been about almost a year now. We got a call out of Florida from a guy that said it helped save his child's life. It got the responders there, so that kind of made that circle come back around. And it really meant something to all of us for that to happen. They're hard to sell, and I can walk up to anybody and sell one, but for someone to search for it, to find it, or even to see it, it's hard for them to buy. And the only thing that I can think of is anything that we have to have safety related, like on a boat per se. If you, for a throw seat or the safety button, a wrist thing, that if you fall out of the boat, the key comes out, or anything safety has to be mandated. Everything, you ride in a car, you put a seatbelt on. Why do you put a seatbelt on? Because the law says you got to have one. But if you think about it, everything that involves your safety, we have to be mandated to do it. And we thought of that. We actually got into into a city ordinance that every house now that's being built has to have one. So if we could do that in all of them, it'd be great. We might break even one day. But they're slowly getting out there. The commercial that you just showed is going live on TV. It's supposed to go on the April 1st. But there's a delay. It's probably going to be a couple of days. We're hoping that will help get it out there. I know Fox News picked it up early on their own, and we sold like 300 bulbs the first day that they did it. But, that story went away and the sales went off. But it's a great product. It works. We've got story after story after story of it happening, but it's hard to sell them.
Yeah, I think, you and I were talking a while back about this, and I remember my grandparents had built a house early 2000s. And when they built this house, it must have been just code in the neighborhood or something, because I've never seen another house have this in there, but they had their switches for the lights on the outside, obviously right there at the front door. And one of the switches which lit up, there was an option where if you flicked it into the middle, it was labeled as 911, and it would make the lights on their front porch and then the light posts in their front yard, it would make them flash. And I know that whole neighborhood for the most part has something like that, but I've never seen anything else like it. I think it's a great idea. I think, in fact, I'll probably end up getting one for my grandmother and probably for my in-laws too, because yeah, it's perfect. Especially I live out in the country. I live out in the middle of nowhere, and we just built our house. And I've had friends come over here when I first started this podcast. I'd have friends come out here, and it was kind of a good way for them to see the new house, check it all out, and I could do an interview with them. They text me, they were supposed to be here 5 minutes ago, and they texted me and said, I have no idea where your house is. All I'm seeing is a field. Well, that's awesome. So I'd have to guide them in where they were, and turns out they were about 5 minutes down the road.
Wow.
So I think it's a great product. I think it's awesome, and I definitely want to share that with as many people as I can.
Jonathan, the inventor, he lives in Oklahoma, out near where Jason, he endorses it out there too. He's always have. But Jonathan had his mother, she was sick, living with him. She was the first one that it was actually used on. His house pinged like yours about several miles down the road from where his actual address is. So he's got it all on videotape. He called 911. She got like septic or something. He called 911 and he activated the light. When they pulled up, they were like blown away. They said, we could see your house from a mile away. It's just unbelievable. It just happens to be his mother, the inventor's mother, that it actually worked first. She was the first one that it was used on. But yeah, it just, you can imagine, Cody, you're on the ambulance, and Tyler, you're on the engine. Tyler, you're probably going to get there first. Fire always gets there first for some reason.
Not when I'm driving.
Oh, okay. So I'll tell you.
Just not in one
The fire
piece.
department gets there, whoever gets there first, you come up and you take a ride on that street, and you see the fire truck a half a mile down the street already there. That's your locator. And
Big red dot finder is what I call them.
yeah, exactly. And they're parked in the driveway where you can't get in. But anyway, that's a different story. But the thing is that you can see it and with the locator, you're the first one. You're on that street. That fire truck's not down there, so that locator's activated, and it helps. You just drive straight through it.
No, it's definitely something I think if it sounds like it's already beneficial, but could definitely be a thing that once it gets out there, even more beneficial, because I've been on runs before where MDT says the house is here, my phone's GPS says it's here, and then the house is in a completely different location than what either one of them has said. And I think in 15 years of EMS, I can only remember one occasion in which it was a similar setup to what Tyler was talking about, where they would just look like somebody was inside turning the switch on and off. And that's 15 years of doing this. I've seen it once, and I looked at some of the videos that you guys have up on your website right before we got on here, how visible it makes that address, that location, as you're, mile down the road, half a mile down the road. Like there's no guessing. It's over there, guys.
It's right there. So my hospital, Williamson Medical Center, is one of the very prestigious hospital in the Middle Tennessee, just south of Nashville. They endorse our product. And to get that endorsement, I had to go up and talk to them about it, and I had to tell them, I said, listen, I'm probably going to get in trouble. I do not endorse it on calls. If I've got a patient, I don't cross that line. Should I at times maybe, but I don't cross that line. I told him, I said, I'm going to have to tell you this story. I had a patient one day, and it was a woman with an adult disabled man, that he was disabled, and we were transporting him, and I swear this happened. And that's what I told him at the hospital, and I swear to it today. She looked at me And she said, I wish I could find a light bulb that would alert first responders to my house and act as a regular light bulb because my house is so hard to find. Listen, I told him, just like I'm telling you, I said, I had to tell her. And then back to that ambulance, I told her about the Locator 911, but I didn't sell her a bulb. I gave her a bulb. A couple of days later, she came to the fire hall and I gave her a bulb. And we have got several videos of real calls of where they went to her house. She had it installed herself in the Gabriel end of her house. I mean, she had somebody come up and put a fixture up there. You know, that is an option. You can put it anywhere you want, but we just say it's so simple. You can just change out your light. That's it. But I had one video I can't use because of the paramedics that were driving up the driveway started screaming and yelling, Danny Cupples, look what we got here. You know, it's like, well, don't need to edit that out or something. But that really happened. And I don't cross that line whenever I'm in an ambulance, you know, with a patient. You know, we could do it every time, but I just don't do it. But it will make a difference. It has made a difference. We've been in 55 and up communities that love it. Several of them, they use it all the time. But it's hard. It's hard. It's a hard product to sell. It really is.
So I know that you can scan that QR code, and I'm actually for the viewers I already have, but for you guys, I'll put that video at the very front of our interview. But so I know you can scan that QR code. Where else can you find the Locator 911?
They're on that when you scan that QR code, but thelocator911.com. Like what the commercial says, they're only sold online. We do have one store that has a setup in it. It's an Ace Hardware locally. It's just privately owned. Ace Hardware, they have it. They have the display. Other than that, it's only sold online. For now, we've got a new product that's coming out that it's mind-boggling, actually, and we're really going to push it when we get to the point we can. It's a light fixture. It's cordless, rechargeable. The whole fixture itself is waterproof. It's got an adapter. We have actually one now that you can either stick on the side of your house. You can bring it camping with you and put it on your camper. You can put it in your boat. You can put it in your car. You can carry it backpacking, hiking, wherever. You know, you keep it charged up. It's got you take it apart and you can charge it up, and it's phenomenal. We've already approached like Bass Pro and Camping World and people like that, but we do not have it out there right now. But it's one of our bulbs is similar to it. It's called the Freedom Bulb, and that's the one that uses the fob. So that light also uses the fob. You can turn it on and off at the light itself, or you can use the remote. So our Freedom Bulb works kind of like that, and some campers use it as well. But I do appreciate you doing that and putting that on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put it on my Facebook page and everything. Do you guys have a Facebook page set up or any
We
kind of
do.
social
We're
media?
on all the platforms:
Awesome.
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I can't believe I'm saying TikTok.
I'll be sure to share that information too on all my platforms as well, and we'll help spread the word a little bit more.
I sure appreciate it.
Maybe I might mention it, at work too.
Where do y'all live?
Do some Fort Wayne, Indiana area for me.
Okay. Yeah, we've got some bulbs up there scattered around from here or there.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily, it would be good to have it, but I see more of a benefit out in some of the rural areas that my fire department covers, more so than some of the suburban, the housing additions and stuff like that. Because most of the housing additions have OA requirements as far as housing numbers and street numbers and what have you. But you get out into some of those more rural areas, and honestly, I don't even know how the mailman finds the houses sometimes, because there's not even any numbers on the mailbox, let alone on the house that's, a quarter mile down the drive. So, and sometimes it's just a guessing game of, this is where this should be. Let's try this one.
Yeah, we've been contacted by Chicago Fire when they found out about it several years ago. They say there are a lot of big buildings there. Even if people inside these buildings had it outside their door, when they get off the elevator, turn right or left, they can see it. I mean, even in that situation, we seen it where it helps in apartment complexes. You ever drove up to a big apartment complexes that's got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 22, 20? I mean, it's just like, How do you find it? And we seen it works phenomenally in those things. You can see that light fly. Oh heck! And some of those buildings don't have it on there. I'm looking for building D, room 107, and it's like, where in the crap is D at? So, but it's not in front of E. I looked.
There's some complexes in this city that are exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And there's
Turn
no
left. It's
frustrating. It's frustrating enough to go to a call, work a cardiac arrest, and they don't make it. It's frustrating enough. But that same call that you added 5 or 6 minutes to because you couldn't find them, what if you had that 5 or 6 minutes back? That's just another wonder, what if, that's what goes through my mind. Just like the little girl that's in cardiac arrest.
Well, Danny, I greatly appreciate you joining us today. This has been an awesome conversation and learned a ton. Do you have any final words of anything you'd like to say to anybody?
I know what this podcast is about, a lot about, it's focusing a lot on PTSD. I've had too many friends commit suicide, close friends. If I'll tell you what, my next door neighbor is a former SWAT guy that I work with, and his wife is a nurse, and their son is now a new firefighter. He's been on the force. He's been on the fire department now a couple of years. We live out in the country, so we got a lot of land. I ride my cart over to their house, and she's telling me she's worried about her son as far as, because he's already seen a lot, for a young 21-year-old. She said, I'm so worried that he can see something bad or want to take his own life. And I told her I would talk to him, have that conversation, and we have. And what she told me next, it just it floored me, and it made me think about what I can tell somebody else. And I've actually used this in my other class, is that she said, his name is Mason, and he'll probably hear it, but if you ever get in your mind that you want to take your own life, before you pull that trigger or do it however, I want you to think about something. Make this be that thought in your mind of how it's going to affect me. Once you do it, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to your sister? What's going to happen to your daddy? Because it's going to ruin their lives. Their lives, the way it is today, is going to be over forever. So what the actions that you will do will kill all of us. Literally, our normalcy will end. And she said, the way she said it, it just I get chills now thinking about it. And many, many times telling that story teared up, and it's hard not to. And I say that, I use those words that she told me. So, and that's what I'll share again today, is that if you know anybody, tell them, that kind of story, how it would affect. Because I know when you get to that point, I know how the dark hole works. I think if you've been in this business long enough, you've got a glimpse of it, that dark place. If you hadn't, I'm not going to say you're lying, but if you hadn't, it's probably going to happen. But think about how it would affect others, someone really close to you, before you make a decision. My best friend Jerry, he had a beautiful family with some young grandkids, and today that just haunts me, is how he got deep enough into that hole not to think about those kids, those grandkids, and all the people that loved him. He was that guy that everybody loved. I don't care who you are. Everybody loved him. He was just a great guy. He worked with the police department, with the SWAT, on fire. His dad was the chief of a volunteer fire. He's a critical care paramedic. I mean, it's just everybody loved him. He had that great personality. So, and you guys know this, that person sitting beside you might be that one. So sharing information like this could be in their minds. They could be thinking about it when they're in that dark place. And a thought like what my neighbor said to her son could be just enough to bring them backwards. To me, that dark hole is like driving from California to New York. At night, you got 60 feet of headlight in front of you. You can drive all night long with no problems, but if you cut those headlights off, you're stopping, and you're waiting for the next little glimmer to get you another few feet down the road until you get enough until your headlights gets on. But that dark hole, that's kind of how I say it. It's like that. You can drive all the way from California. You have to stop for gas, but from California to New York with 60 feet of headlights, you're going with no problems. The light goes out, you're stopping. You are stopping until you can find a way to go further. But anyway, That's my last thoughts on that.
Oh, that's awesome. Like I said, I greatly appreciate you meeting with us. Cody, any final remarks?
I liked his analogy about the drive from California to New York. I think it just puts that into a perspective. I don't want to say dumbs it down, but a visualization of what he's talking about. And, some of what you were saying about, sharing that information with people that around you that, think about what happens to your loved ones once you make that decision, or even your friends around you. Or, several years ago, I actually had a member of my fire department actually commit suicide, and it changed a lot of things. I've always had fun doing my job. Obviously, I wouldn't have been doing it this long if I didn't enjoy it, if I didn't have fun doing it. But it went from being fun to, well, now this is a place I go to work. It changed things. The attitude around the fire department is different. It went from it's different.
It went from being something you love doing to a job.
Yeah. I mean, I still love doing my job, but it's different now.
Yeah. Yeah, got to find a way. You got to find a way to get by that, and that's not as easy as just snapping your fingers. Absolutely, it's not. And I hope that I never get to that point. Right now, at 36 year into EMS, I love going in. I love what I do. I love my job. I love every minute of it. I work for a good company, and I hope and pray that I don't get to where I don't want to go in no more. If I do, I'm probably going to find something else to do. I hope it never happens. And I hope I'm okay, to be okay. That really sticks with me a lot. We talked about it earlier, but you think, man, you see all these people that are having some. A guy a fireman called me a while ago that actually attempted suicide and almost did it. He calls me every day, and he was put on a helicopter and he just survived suicide attempt, and he still struggles. And I talk to him all the time. I said, dude, we tell those analogies about driving from California to New York and everything, and he still struggles with it. Just hey, if you got anybody out there, if you got something on your mind, talk about it, get it out, find a way to laugh.
Awesome. Well, Danny, thank you again very much. For everybody else, the Locator911.com is where you can find that. You can scan the QR code if you're watching on YouTube or even Spotify video. With that, I appreciate you both, and we'll catch y'all next time.
Appreciate y'all.